Alright, here we are going into a new computer art lesson, and what we're going to be doing today is starting a space scene or spacescape in Photoshop. And what we did before was we're coming from doing a simple kind of a earthly landscape, and now we're going into a planet. So kind of space scene. What we're going to do is start a new document, 10 inches by 8, and a resolution of 150 pixels per inch. RGB color is good. We can always entitle this before we get started. So I'll call it space. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we are going to change our fill color to black. If you click on this little icon here, that'll change your color you're going to use for your fill. Our fill bucket hangs out in here with our gradient tool, both filling tools. So we'll take this fill bucket and we're just going to fill this first layer black. Then we're going to add a second layer above that and also fill that black. So if we look over here in our layers panel, we should see two black layers. Now on layer 1 here, what we're going to do is we are going to use some new filters and render some things in this lesson. So in our filter menu from the top bar, we're going to go down to filter and noise. We're going to add noise. And basically what noise is as you can see, it looks kind of like that speckle that you see on the TV when you lose power or your cable goes out. And so what that's going to be is kind of like stars off in the distance. Kind of just gives the base texture to our scene. Somewhere around 30 there looks good, so we don't get too many bright. If you turn it up a lot, you get really this brightness that we really don't want. Somewhere around 30 I think is good. It gives the appearance, the illusion of stars kind of off in the distance. Alright, great. So now what we're going to do is add another layer on top of that, and we are going to change our fill color to really anything. I'll go ahead, I could start with this purple color, and I'm just going to fill this layer a solid color. Now what we're going to also do is back in our filter menu, we're going to go down to filter and render. And now what we're going to do is we're going to render what are called clouds. And these are going to kind of create these nebula type shapes in our scene. You have two options. Clouds will give you very normal-ish looking clouds. I mean, granted, we did use purple, so there's some purple with white in there. But if we render difference clouds, what it's going to do is it's going to give us a funky color, the negative color, the opposite of what we picked. And so that's going to make for a much more interesting kind of texture here in our scene. And we're going to want 3 of those layers. So choose another color, fill your scene, and then go to filter, render, and difference clouds again. Alright, and one last time, we're going to take yet another color, maybe like a yellowy type color. Fill that here. We'll go to filter, render, and difference clouds. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we are going to change the layer style of these 3 cloud layers. We're going to change our layer style by just clicking in this menu where it says normal here, and we'll go down to screen, and what that does, you can see now that you can see some of the layer underneath it through it, and that's really what we want to do to all of these layers again. So screen again, now we're really getting some interesting results. And this third layer also, we will change to screen mode, and now you can see some of our star texture come through the background from that layer 1. Alright, so now what we're going to do is actually play around with our eraser tool, and we're going to just play around with a big eraser. So if we look at our eraser menu here, you want a fuzzy edged eraser, so any one of these you pick is good. The hardness down at 0, and if we're looking at the size, about 260, this works pretty well. Could make it a little bigger, could make it a little smaller, somewhere around there, so that what we're going to do is kind of clear up and make some space where we're just going to erase a bit of each layer so that we add some more variety in here, because it's very uniform. It's kind of like a very uniform pattern going all the way across. So I'm just kind of erasing little patches of this layer here. Did some on layer 4, and now we'll go down to layer 3, and again I'll just kind of erase a couple little patches here just to add a little more variety to what the scene looks like, and make it not so regular, going all the way around there. Alright, and now what we'll do is save this layer 2. We'll keep this one from erasing. What we're going to do in this layer is actually add what are called lens flares. So we're going to use our filter menu again at the top, and we're going to go down to render. In that same menu where we got clouds, we're going to render a lens flare. And that's going to be kind of like a star off in the distance here. So what we can do is when it opens up this menu, we choose the placement of our lens flare before we actually place it down. I think this corner is a good spot. If I look at and pull my menu over here, this would be a good spot. You know, up and kind of separated off in the corners are good spots. Probably don't want to try and put it too smack in the middle. You have a couple different options here as far as flares go. I like this one especially, and I think the first one. This one adds in some extra lines that aren't very realistic. And this one's pretty cool too. I like the first one and the third one. So I'm going to put in both, but I'll put in this one first. So you got one lens flare there, and you can see some of the trails from it there. And I'll also go ahead and do filter, render another lens flare. This time I'll change it to, oops. So it's actually overlapping it right over the other one, so you got to move it over to see what the difference is. And this one I'm going to kind of put in this opposite corner here. Alright, so now we've got some stars off in the distance, we got some nebula looking type clouds. Now what we're going to get into is adding a planet. And how we're going to do that is we'll need to start a new layer on this project. We're going to take our circular or elliptical marquee tool, and we are going to hold the shift key and click and drag in order to make a circle for a planet. And that looks like a pretty good size right there. Now what we're going to use is our gradient tool, which hides underneath our paint bucket tool. Remember, we had to click around to find that before. We're going to take this gradient, I'm going to click up on our gradient menu. Right now I've got this changed to a clear to black gradient. We're going to have to change that up. So what I'm going to do is, this is the top key here is where you choose clear or solid. So you can see this side is solid black, so its opacity is 100. This side is 0, so its opacity is nothing. So I want to turn that up so that I have a color to a different color. And a color not to black. Let's make it like a blue to maybe a lighter blue or something like that. Alright, so that works. You can choose any colors, don't have to choose the same that I'm using. We'll say OK. What we want to look at in our top menu here is that we have our radial gradient picked. Let's see if I hover over this. Yes, radial gradient. So that's the second one there. The first one's linear. So this is going to make more of a rounded type gradient to fill here. I think actually I'm going to do this the opposite way. There we go. So now I have my darker shadow side on this side, lighter one on this side. Doesn't really matter. I have stars on either side, so it could be either way. But now what we're going to do is, once we have that layer, we're going to add another one. There's actually going to be 3 layers that make up this planet. Okay, so next layer now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my lasso tool. Hopefully your selection is still there. And what you want to do is choose your subtract from selection option on your lasso tool. And what we're going to do is just kind of draw some shapes and kind of cut away some little patches from this selection. Okay, so make them kind of jagged and rough, not very uniform shapes. We're just going to add a little bit of texture to this planet. And so, it doesn't need to be any particular rhyme or reason. Just take out a good amount of that shape, at least half of it, so that looks like pretty good. And what we're going to do is then fill this gradient with yet another, or this selection actually with another gradient, a different one this time. So we'll choose our gradient tool, go back to our color picker here, and let's choose some colors that are a little different. We'll go with like a light blue here, and then something else here that's maybe like way different. So maybe something more like a green. Alright, and now we'll take that, go in that same direction. Actually, I wanted to go the opposite way. Cool. So that works pretty good actually for colors for my planet. Actually, maybe what I'll do one more time, we'll try this. Okay, yeah, that works pretty good. Good enough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a third layer to this, and it's going to be the shadow layer, which really helps this appear to be a rounded planet. So what we'll do is we'll press the Command key on our keyboard and then click on the thumbnail image of our original base layer. of the planet. That will give us our circle selection back right in the same place here. All right, we'll do one last gradient, and then that'll be it for part 1 of this assignment, and we'll go into part 2 afterwards. So I'm going to take the opacity and actually turn this back down. We're going to create that gradient that I had in here before. So we're going to go from clear to black. Okay, so now I have a clear gradient to a black selected. I'll say OK, and let's see, maybe I'll take it go this way, and now you can see that clear to black gradient really adds the shadow that we need on this planet to kind of create that three-dimensional type feel to it. All right, and like I said, that is it for part 1 of this particular of this lesson. Part 2 we'll add in, I'll go into duplicating this planet, changing its color scheme, and then also adding in some blur trails and different kind of galaxy looks to it.